You seem to have built yourself a reputation as a servant leader, right? Who empowers teams to deliver innovative solutions. What does servant leadership look like to you outside what you've already mentioned? And how has it shaped the company's culture and success?
So, that term servant leader, it's been around since probably the 70s, right? And I think that how we think and talk about it today looks totally different than it did just 50 years ago. And what people will tell me is that they see that I actively prioritize the needs of our employees, our customers, clients, and communities over my own gain or the organizational gain. The way that I've built trust with them is through listening, empathy, including them in conversations. They tell me how I'm able to balance the short and the long term as it relates to the outcomes of the organization.
What does it really mean to lead through service rather than authority? In an industry where precision, performance, and deadlines often take center stage, the idea of servant leadership might sound idealistic. But today's guest proves it can drive both innovation and impact. Joining us today is Lisa Robert, PE, President and CEO at RS&H, a nationally recognized leader in architecture, engineering, and consulting. With over 35 years of experience, Lisa has guided teams through industry transformation while staying rooted in purpose-driven leadership. In this episode, we'll be talking about how she applied servant leadership in action, how technology and new delivery frameworks are reshaping infrastructure, and what qualities today's civil engineers need to lead with confidence and to create lasting value. If you're a civil engineering professional looking to grow as a leader, adapt to change, and inspire your teams to do the best work, this episode is for you. Lisa is a wealth of information, and we are so lucky to have her. Before we jump in, I do want to tell you about AEC PM Connect, the event designed for firm leaders who want to elevate project delivery, build strong teams, and scale with confidence. And here's the most exciting part. At this event, we'll also be announcing the winners of the AEC PM Awards, recognizing professionals who lead with purpose and deliver measurable results. Just imagine someone from your firm being named AEC PM of the Year. That kind of recognition can boost your people, your culture, and your firm's reputation in a big way. The event will take place on June 10th, 2026 at the Forescate Country Club in New Jersey. You can register now at aecpmconnect.com. And if you want to nominate someone for the awards, head over to aecpmawards.com to download the nomination guide before the deadline on February 28th. I'm your host, Fiona Johan, and this is the Civil Engineering CEO Show. Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
Lisa, can you tell our listeners a bit about your background and your career journey that you've taken from starting out in engineering to becoming the RS&H's president and CEO?
Yeah, I would say that it hasn't been a direct line from point A to point B. So just background, I'm a civil engineer. Originally from North Carolina. I went to school at NC State and was the first person in my family to go to college. So I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I was always told I knew I was good at math. We didn't have, the resources that are available today to help people determine what type of career path they want to take. And I was like, oh, well, I'll try engineering. There's a lot of math, this and that. So went to school, like I said, at NC State, graduated, had to fund my way through college. So I was working a lot during that time. And I found myself working for the North Carolina Department of Transportation as I was going to school. And strange story, I was waitressing and I had these clients that came in every day for lunch and they asked for me and they were just delightful. And one day they said, well, what are you going to school for? And I went civil engineering. And they're like, we work with the North Carolina Department of Transportation. You should come and do an internship with us. So never underestimate how those moments in time could just really take you on a different path. Worked with them for probably the first 10 years of my career and worked in construction. So I was wearing the safety vest and the hard hat and the steel-toed shoes every day, and I loved it. It was a great place to start my career. I love the pace of construction. Because you made a decision and you immediately could figure out if it was the right or the wrong decision, right? And it was, really just nice seeing those decisions immediately translate into action and outcomes. So it kind of sped up, I think, my learning curve on a lot of different things. But it also instilled in me a deep, deep, deep appreciation of being a steward of taxpayers' dollars. That's important as a taxpayer for all of us.
Heard.
Um, for sure. And then working in construction, it reminded me the importance of safety for the public as well as, those that are working in construction. And these are all hardworking people with families that they go home to every night. So I was so thankful for that early career, that early 10 years that I spent with the department, because I think it really helped to solidify just some foundational things with me that have followed me throughout my career, right? So I then moved to a North Carolina based privately owned company. They were roughly 150 employees in size at that point in time, and served in various roles with them, and had management experience when I was in with the Department of Transportation, but that began to amplify when I moved to this private company, and moved into their role as COO, and then had the opportunity with them to move from North Carolina to Florida to start their base of operations there. That was the first COO role in the company. Gave me an opportunity to kind of step back of doing the work and just setting in place some of the guidelines and procedures of how we do the work as an entire company, which was a great learning and leveling up experience for me. And then 15 years ago, found myself at RS&H, where I remain today. Most recently, appointed to the CEO in October, the beginning of October. So I'm a month in to that, and previous to that, served as our COO. RS&H, we're roughly 2,000 employees, national footprint, over $500 million in gross revenue. And part of my move to RS&H was to give me another platform to continue to grow my career. And plus, I got to know the people with that company. They had the highest levels of integrity and were just incredible people. And it was a great, great move for me. So, the transition from the core technical to where I sit today, I look back on my career and there were bands of time where I was leaning in and learning different things. But, when I say it hasn't been a straight line path, I took a step back in positionally from the prior company that I worked with to RS&H. I was an officer. I was their COO. And when I came to RS&H, I wasn't an officer. I was actually, for the first time in my career, moving away from having construction management under my wing. So that was really, terrifying for me not to have that piece of comfort in what my day-to-day job was. And then, just always raising my hand and going, yeah, I'll try that. I'll do that. And stepping into where the need of the organization was more so than what my own aspirations were. That's kind of what my journey looked like, which sometimes meant I moved forward. Sometimes I moved back. Sometimes I moved sideways and exposed myself to things I had zero experience in. And with that, learned how to succeed and fail gracefully. Oh,
Those are important qualities, especially when you get up into those C-level roles too, right? Like it sounds like you really embraced, doing what needed to be done
yeah.
and serving your people in the way that needed to be served, which kind of leads me to my next question, is that you've seemed to have built yourself a reputation as a servant leader, right? Who empowers teams to deliver innovative solutions. What does servant leadership look like to you outside what you've already mentioned? And how has it shaped the company's culture and success?
Yeah. So, that term servant leader, it's been around since probably the 70s, right? And I think that how we think and talk about it today looks totally different than it did just 50 years ago, right? So I want to be clear, that's not a label that I place on myself. It's actually something that others say to me. And when they do, I go, well, what does that mean, to
What does it
you?
mean to you?
Right. Because that's what's most important, right? And what people will tell me is that they see that I actively prioritize the needs of our employees, our customers, clients, and communities over my own gain or the organizational gain. They'll share with me that the way that I've built trust with them is through listening, empathy, including them in conversations. They tell me how I'm able to balance the short and the long term as it relates to the outcomes of the organization. Um, they appreciate that I mentor and coach them and can empower them to achieve their greatest potential. But the biggest compliment to me personally, as well as that I hear back, is just they know what they're getting with me. I'm authentic. I mean, certainly you've got to calibrate how you interact depending on the audience. But when they say authentic, I dig into that a little bit more, and they're like, you're not afraid to say where you are. You're not afraid to learn. You're not afraid to listen. You're not afraid to acknowledge that you may not be right on something, and that's a lot of the time. But that's what they tell me. So at RS&H, I've also been the benefactor over the last 15 years of seeing CEOs, two different CEOs in that role that embody a lot of those same things, and I've learned a lot from them, from interacting with them, and how I can be a better human and be a better leader in our organization. And that great fit has just really, put the wind beneath my wings with support from those that believed in me when maybe I didn't believe in myself to move to where I am. So long answer, but it's not a self label. And for me, it's important to understand what do other people think that means when they say that. But I'm
I think
honored
that
when someone uses that.
I think it is indeed an honor. And I think what you said there's so important in multiple ways. In that, first of all, when someone says something to you, you're like, tell me what that means to you. So we have this shared understanding, right? And that is in itself could be clarifying in so many different leadership roles and levels. And I also love that you're putting it back on them. Tell me more what that means to you, because you can instill it. And the fact that we're looking at, examples of people who you think have done it well and embracing what they have. Because truly, I always like to say we steal with our eyes, right? We see what works well and what doesn't.
No.
To look at the people in front of you who are doing it well and
Yeah.
take from them what's working.
Yeah. And the ones that aren't.
Yes.
And take away what's not working,
Right. I'm not going to do that thing.
figure out how to embrace those things in a manner that represent you and that are authentic to
The
who you are as
authenticity.
as
Yes.
a person. Yeah. That's the easiest thing to do every day, is to be yourself,
It's very easy to get caught up in other places, but if you can
Uh-huh.
be authentic with it, I think
Yeah.
people in general, leadership, if people feel you're being authentic, no matter what it is, they're kind of into it, right?
Yeah.
They're
Well,
like, oh, they believe in what they're saying. All right.
mm,
Well, then I believe you too.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
In the AEC industry, skilled project managers are the backbone of success. EMI's AEC PM certification offers tailored training, ongoing support, and exclusive access to premium content that keeps your team sharp and effective. From foundational training to advanced leadership tools, set your team apart with certified growth. Learn more at aecpm.com. That's aecpm.com.
So you've had about 35 years in the AEC industry.
Yeah.
What do you think is one of the most significant leadership challenges you've faced, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And 35 years goes by in the blink of an eye, right? I think for me, it's that transition to being able to balance my head, which you lean into early in your career, and your heart, which continues to develop through your career. And in that, like figuring out how to navigate the gray, because the gray is a big band in life, as a leader, as a parent, as a friend, as a whatever, you name it, right? And early in your career, you're leaning into the black and white. I mean, I look back on my career in construction, and it was all driven by, what do the plans say? What do the specs say? What are the contract documents say? And it's very easy to just think of things in terms of right or wrong, black or white, whatever. And what you realize is that those rule books, those plans, those specs, there's a lot of gray that's in that. And that means you have to move from this comfort zone of relying on the technical aspects to then that deeper and next level kind of thinking and critical thinking, and that impacts to stakeholders and impacts to the projects, et cetera. Then I think about mid-career, right? Where you're starting to understand the width of that gray in basically any decision that you make. And you find yourself thinking through it, not just through the technical lens, but the social lens, the people lens, etc. And again, that gray, it just continues to
Keeps
expand,
getting
right?
bigger.
And then, later in your career, you start leaning to and really understanding that balance of leading not only with your head, but also your heart. And sometimes those things are going to be in conflict with one another. And as a leader, what I remind myself is my job is to make the best decision for the entire organization and not just for an individual. And so, yeah, but that's been a 35-year journey of learning and reflection that's kind of brought me to thinking about that, leading with head and heart in a balanced manner.
I really like the early and mid career, like the phases of gray expanding. I feel like that hits home because you just become more and more aware of all these things. Like this is not as simple as I once hoped it was. And
What's the
along that mindset, I wonder what you think an important trait or mindset is for civil engineers that as they're growing, what they can do to become effective leaders and add value to their organization as they're learning about more of these shades of gray.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the word learning, right? For it's lifelong learning. And in doing that, it embeds in you adaptability. It encourages curiosity. That's one of our company's core values. And I love, love, love that core value so much because it's just this acceptance of the world around us is changing. It's changing quickly. And if you I say to folks all the time, if you don't go to bed smarter every day, then you need to quit doing what you're doing because we have to be adaptable. And the way to do that is through being curious and lifelong learning. And, I probably take an hour every day and I'm just reading articles and scouring. And, one article read doesn't necessarily indicate that it's a trend, but if you're doing enough reading and that self lifelong learning, you see trends and then you go, okay, this is something I need to pay attention to. And so unless you're disciplined in that and that lifelong learning mentality and investing in that on your own, as well as hopefully being a part of an organization that invests in that, for you, you can find yourself caught behind the trends of what's going on very, very quickly. So, um, and that lifelong learning is also personal as well, right? There's points in your career where you have to feel like you're right, and then there's points in your career where you need to acknowledge that you're wrong and you don't know the answers to things, and to really lean in and seek that support and perspectives from others in order to come to the right decisions.
Yeah, that reflective piece is so important. We practice it at home. We ask our kids every day. At the end of the day, the last question we ask them is, what did you learn today?
Mhm.
And we do that because we as adults also do it. And I feel like it's so important in like your home life, in your
Yeah.
career. What did I learn today?
Yeah.
And I feel like you just really hit the nail on the head with that one because like you said, I can't speak enough about watching for those trends. And that takes so much time and effort, right? You said an hour a day. That's not nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's part
mean,
of our morning ritual and like scrolling, looking at things and yeah, it takes focus, right?
yeah,
And
a
the thing that I
curiosity.
would say is when you're doing that debrief about what did you learn today, sometimes it's very easy for us to focus on what we did wrong. And there's learnings in that. Don't get me wrong, but you got to find that balance of where you're not kicking yourself or something, but you're really treating it as an opportunity to forgive, to acknowledge what you may have done wrong that day, forgive yourself, but learn from it and try not to, you know,
Take in the data, analyze. What are we
yeah,
doing with it next? How are
yeah,
we making it better?
yeah,
That's great. And so, you've touched on this a little bit, but what technology and new delivery frameworks are transforming how we plan and deliver infrastructure, right? So we're
yeah.
staying on top of trends. What emerging practices do you see as game changers for the AEC industry's future?
Yeah. So I'm a little scared to answer this question because
No pressure.
technology and how it's moving. I say something today and it'll be outdated 4 to 6 months from now,
As
right?
of today,
As of
early November.
over 30 seconds ago, anything I could say could possibly be outdated, right? But, so what we have in our industry is we have a dwindling number of engineers graduating and entering our industry, right? And as an AEC firm, we find ourselves with competition for that same talent that didn't exist at the level that it does today, right? So what that means is that, their technology is going to be a part of filling that gap, right? And so the term today and, where everyone's focused on is AI and how are you using it in your company? And I do believe that that is a piece of it, right? But it's probably not the only answer, okay? But when I think about AI in our industry, I mean, you're seeing more and more generative design options that are out there that are speeding up outcomes. You're seeing a stronger lean into digital twin usage that can predict the future versus us having to stay on top of incremental changes through digital twins that can really help us to predict the efficiency and the outcomes and the life cycles. But you think about 3D construction, you think about the fact that there's going to be more and more automated construction equipment, especially with the lack of skilled laborers in the construction industry. So I think it's a lot of the same things that we've been talking about for a while in the space. But I think that the speed of adaptation of those different things is probably going to increase in the years ahead. So,
Back to that keeping
yeah,
up with the trends.
yeah. Our industry is steeped in tradition, right? And, as we see these changes, particularly as it relates to AI usage and things like that, it's just incredibly important for us to continue to advocate and demand professional engineering licensure because there is a responsibility to the public, and I do believe that responsibility, although it can be supplemented through those areas, that it will take humans that had those early life experiences like I did, where I really learned why safety was important, right? It's going to take that type of level of thinking for us to continue to ensure that this industry maintains the credibility that we have today and that also continues to protect public interest. So, yeah.
Love it. So along, the lines of we're growing, we want to be growing our pool of engineers, but
Yeah.
there's a limited pipeline. You've been a strong advocate for inclusion. So how do you foster a sense of belonging, and why do you think it's so vital to firms' long-term success? And I kind of think it probably, this is my own opinion, probably has like when you have limited resources, you want to make sure your people feel
Yeah.
included.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I would say that my advocacy for inclusion probably started out in my construction years, right? I mean, we're talking a long time ago, and I didn't look like everybody else on the project, right? And so a lot of times I felt on the outside of things. So I felt that personally sometimes. So for me, that's incredibly important and has shaped me through my career, right? So belonging, inclusion, whatever words we want to use. But at the core, it's like recognizing everybody's bringing different perspectives to the conversation. And the best thing you can do is to tease out those experiences. Because when you do that, you get a better outcome. So there's a business prop for inclusion, right? You get better outcomes, decisions for our clients, for our communities, for our company, for each other. So, to do that, you gotta continue to invite those perspectives into a conversation. And sometimes there are going to be people that sit on the fringe and they got great ideas, but they might not be comfortable in that environment bringing those ideas forward, right? So, you've got to find ways to do that in a manner where they don't feel like they're in the spotlight, right? And then make them even more uncomfortable. And you got to find ways to encourage and reward curiosity. I said a moment ago, one of our core values is curiosity. I love it for so many reasons. And when someone's displaying it, going, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for asking, that question." And sometimes people will ask a question and I'll be like, "I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question." So you've got to show that vulnerability, right? It's okay to say that you don't know. And I think that sometimes as a leader, when we do that, that just encourages others to like step up and lean in more in the conversation. So, I don't think there's any one definition of how you achieve it. I think, it's a lot of different ways, but the best way to do it is just stop, look, listen, ask questions. Don't always feel that you have to have the answer, because if you go in where you always have the answer, it's tough to really tease that out in the organization. And you're right. One of the reasons it's vital is exactly what you said. We've got reduced workforce. You want to create lifelong careers for your employees in your organization. So if you can cultivate that type of environment, you're that much further along in creating that lifelong career path for your employees. We call all of our employees associates. So when I say that, it's not a title. That's just what our employees.
Noted.
So
I think that's so vital. If people feel like they have a voice or can share concerns and know that maybe the answer isn't yes right now, but I've heard you and I'm taking it into account, that's
yeah.
going to build up your team so much. I think that's very insightful. So as we wrap up, what final piece of advice can you share with civil engineering leaders who want to make a lasting impact on their organizations or teams or even their communities?
Yeah. This is going to feel simple on the surface,
I love it. Keep it simple.
guys, in advance, but focus on the important things. And everything's not important. And it's so easy to say, and it's so easy to get sucked into the whirlwind of everything that's going on a daily basis. But like, tie your actions back to the strategy, the vision of the company, act in a manner that is in alignment with the core values of a company. Use those things as a guiding light for your decision. And, that will show continuity within your teams. It'll show consistency in your teams. They'll learn from that. And then if you do that and you do it well, you've mobilized an entire workforce to act in the same way. It's all about prioritizing with clarity, avoiding distractions, and channeling your limited time and energy into those initiatives that they're going to drive meaningful outcomes, and only you know what those meaningful outcomes are for your organization. So always remember what's the most important and focus on that daily.
I love that. In our trainings, we often talk about the 80-20 rule where,
Yeah,
80% of your success is going to come from 20% of the things you choose to put your effort into.
that's right.
And figuring out what those are can be trouble, can be tough, but it's so
Oh,
crucial because you're going to get the biggest returns there instead of spending your time on that other 80% that's just not getting you anywhere.
yeah, for sure. That 80-20, it comes into everything, right? It's like
Everything. We talk about it all the time.
yeah,
Life, work, everything. Where am I spending this 20%?
it's maddening, but it's so real. Like sometimes I'll sit there and I'm like, I feel like I'm just not moving the needle, and I'll just that day, what did I spend my time on? And then at the end of the day, I'll go, that was not where I should have been spending time and energy. And that doesn't mean that sometimes you don't have to spend your time there, right? But if you find yourself in that rut, which I have at times, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't I don't need to do that. Am I doing that because I want to do it and it's making me feel fulfilled because it's
Yeah.
eating low-hanging fruit, or is that really what's going to be important for the
Does
organization?
anything actually break if we don't do this?
I
That's
try.
always I'm like, what actually down the line? What actually breaks if we pause on this one?
Yeah. Yep. What's the
Especially when you
worst
hear,
thing that could happen? That's
right? Am I okay with that worst thing? I think I might be.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Lisa, this has been a wonderful conversation. I am so excited for our listeners to hear it. I think
Thanks for
there's
having
so
me.
many, absolutely, there's so many great pieces of wisdom here that I hope they listen to and can synthesize. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that we get to connect again in the future.
I would enjoy that. I would enjoy that
Awesome.
deeply. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineering professionals become better managers and leaders. We'll see you next week.